Welcome. Today I want to welcome Jeremiah Sullivan. Now, Jeremiah Sullivan is the founder of Conquer Academy, former Army Ranger. He was an infantry commander, and he was also Special Operations Platoon Leader in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Now, to people like me that are not in the military, what does that actually mean, and how badass is that?
Well, you know, I don't know if I would call it badass, but I'll just say it took a lot of work for me to achieve that rank and position. But the hardest part was not just like achieving the rank and the position. The hardest part was just changing myself. I think the thing that like a lot of people deal with is just the self-doubt. Believing that you can actually achieve anything in life. And when I started off in life, I didn't think I could achieve anything, let alone become an Army commander, infantry officer at that, highly competitive, Special Operations Platoon Leader. I mean, it was just an amazing experience being in the military, and then to come out of the military, take all that experience and build a business that's been very, very successful over the last like 6 years.
Mhm.
That, like I said, it's not the accolade that I'm very, very proud of. It's the transformation that I had to personally go through that I'm excited to share with people and teach them how to become the leader that they would follow.
Personal transformation is probably one of the biggest things, is that when you go through, whether it's going through divorces, going through the military, going through some kind of job, something, even going through like a hellacious academic experience, and you're just trying to graduate through like Stanford or something, that you mentioned personal transformation is a thing that you hunker down in on Conquer Academy. Like, what do you mean by that, on the importance of personal transformation?
Yeah, I mean, life is not as it is. Life is as you are. So if you want to achieve anything in life, it really doesn't come down to just like laying out the strategy. You actually have to change yourself in order to get life to conform to that identity. So for myself, I grew up in a small town of like 300 people. I struggled with like massive amounts of doubt. I was shy. I didn't speak up. I was the guy that like sat in the back of a classroom, and if you called on me, I would just go absolutely like flush. I didn't want to be seen.
Yeah.
And I was a perfectionist. I wanted to do everything perfect. I didn't want to make mistakes. Didn't really dream big. But I remember Aladdin, like when I was a kid.
Shout out to Aladdin, Princess Jasmine. That's right.
Like the show came on, the movie.
A whole new world. Like, that's what I'm talking about. I'm gonna get up out of this place, dude. Let's go.
But that movie really resonated with me because it was like this poor guy from a town. He was living in poverty, and he wanted to be great. He wanted to be something.
Street rat.
Yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely, man. And that movie just like really called to me. And so that was me as a kid, is I wanted to be something. I wanted to be significant. I wanted to be successful. But I was very sheltered and lived in a small town, and I had no idea how in the hell I would pull it off. So where I'm currently at today, it's a byproduct of doing that internal work, doing the personal development. I just like to say that personal development equips you with the weapons that you need to win the war within. Like everything from mindset to limiting beliefs to goal setting and achievement. And
do you feel like that's a thing that people kind of miss a lot? I mean, it's what you just mentioned in working with people in general. That feels like it's one of the last places people want to dig in, is actually equipping themselves with the weapons for the war within. It's like that's almost the last thing they want to do. Everything is external.
100%. I mean, they absolutely do. But leadership. Every leadership problem typically comes down to a personal development issue. You either don't understand yourself or you don't understand other people. So it's like one of the missing links in a lot of people's lives. Like, you don't get brought up through school teaching, like learning personal development. You get brought up through school teaching how to color inside the lines. And if you want to achieve anything in life, any level of success, you want to lead teams, you want your company to do, it doesn't matter what you want to achieve. It all comes down to building a better you so that you can pull it off.
You mentioned leadership, and that's kind of one of the biggest things when you talk about personal transformation, self-development. It's like self-leading, essentially. Like, you got to lead yourself to your vision of the promised land. How do you define leadership, and how has that definition evolved through your experience?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I would say like leadership is not an occupation, it's a fucking life sentence. Like, the real leadership means that you're going to care about the other people, that you're going to be a servant to those that are around you, and you're going to put other people first before you put yourself. And you're going to do that for your entire life, or while you're given the baton, like you're going to step into that role and do the mission for everybody else. So a lot of times, like in the marketplace today with business and entrepreneurship, these new guys are coming in. They have this idea that they know they need to be leaders, but their identity and their definition of leader is totally off. They think that being a leader means being a boss. And that's far from the truth, because it's like the guy that wants to start his own business. He's like, yeah, I want to start my own business because then I'll get to work for myself. I'll work at home. But if you get your business to any level of success, you're working for everybody else other than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So my point was like bringing this all together is just, leadership. And by my definition is like I said, it's a life sentence, but really what it comes down to is your effectiveness as a leader is measured by your effectiveness of being able to move people. So leaders create movement, right? And at the very bottom tier, the number one person that they move is themselves. So before you're moving anybody else, it's like, I need to move myself. And then as my influence increases, my leadership capacity increases, I can move more people. I can get people in motion towards a common objective.
Right.
So I like to look at like, in the military, they taught us how to basically conduct an attack against a defense. And what that looks like is maybe you got a hilltop and you got an enemy that's fortified up there in the defense. They know you're coming. But around their perimeter is concertina wire and barriers and lookout positions. And your job is to like break through that barrier and get your team inside of the concertina wire and take the hill. So when you go through this movement, you're on the offense. You're going to conduct an attack. You bring in the mortars. You fire off mortars onto the objective to give yourself some concealment to come in. You're moving your assault force in, or your attack force, and then you're bringing in helicopters, Apaches, and you're integrating your fires in order to take over this hilltop, right? And then right there at the outside of the perimeter where the defensive position is, that's a very dangerous spot because it's the last fortified position between you and the enemy. Mm-hmm. So on the offense, we have to break that open. You have to break open the concertina wire. You have to break open, create an entry point so that your guys can get inside. So when you do that, you basically will put down an explosive charge. You'll send some troops in, lay down some suppressive fire. You'll send a leader up there. He'll create a explosive charge to break open the breach, and then you're going to funnel your guys through. But in a fight, I believe doctrine says 33% of your casualties will happen at the breach. That's how dangerous. A third of your fighting force will die in that breach. So it's a very, very dangerous point of friction in the battlefield. But my point is that when you're going to go attack this objective, a leader's job is to be at that point of friction so they can create movement for the force to get inside of the objective and get to the hill. So once the leader identifies that they need to go inside of to the breach, he moves himself, he busts open the breach, and then what does he do? He creates movement so other people can move through it. So leaders create movement. That's the definition of a leader. Dude,
that is so awesome. And they're in the thick of it too.
Absolutely.
So they're not in the back, and it seems like there's these concepts around leadership where you're barking orders. You're telling people what to do, and the way you're describing it, it's a deep appreciation for servitude, that you're in the trenches with them, that you're creating movement within yourself that reverberates to the person next to you.
Yeah, you need to position yourself. As a leader, your number one duty and responsibility is to put yourself in the right place on the battlefield. Like leader placement is one of the most important parts of being a leader. You know, you can't lead a fight if you can't see the fight.
100%.
So where you're putting yourself matters, you know?
And with you working with with Conquer Academy, actually, it's a good pivot point because you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and you've worked with a lot of leaders too. And this not only applies in the military, but that's kind of corporate America too as well, of placing the right person in the right leadership seat to create movement within the company. So they're breaking those barriers into either a new market or new product or a financial barrier or revenue barrier. What inspired you to create Conquer Academy, and what is its core mission to you?
Well, I mean, personally, I'm on a mission to create the number one coaching system for businesses and leaders. So I got out of the military in 2020, and when I did that, my goal was to do one-on-one, get as much hands-on coaching experience as I could, with the end goal in mind of taking all that experience that I gained, turning it into technology and software, and then putting it inside a company so that they can actually scale their leadership development programs. So what inspired me to create Conquer Academy was, to be honest, I reached a really low point. I had a gun in my head one night and a bottle of whiskey in the other hand. I had just accomplished my dream job in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and I was going through survivor's guilt. I was going through, felt like I failed as a leader because when I left the 75th Ranger Regiment, we had a mission that went south. You know, my last op in the Rangers, we had a barricaded shooter inside of a 2-story compound that, you know, counterattacked us as we went in. And that turned into, you know, multiple hours on the inside the compound fighting him and multiple other enemy fighters. You know, it was at like midnight. We was like midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we've got multiple fighters inside of a compound. We had ended up getting like 5 to 10 partner forces wounded that night. Damn near all of my key leaders on the ground that were fighting inside that compound, U.S., were wounded, shrapnel to the eye, shrapnel to the leg. And the guy that we were trying to take out, he had a kid upstairs inside of the building. So he was protecting himself, and we couldn't drop munition down on top of him because he had that kid up there. So we ended up in this giant gunfight trying to capture or kill this target inside a very fortified compound. And then while we were in that fight, the village that we were in was contested. So enemy fighters started waking up and started firing in on us from the periphery. And I had worked really hard personally to make an impact in the military. And getting into the 75th was a big personal goal for me. It meant a lot. And I loved the impact that I was making. But this dream that I had turned into a nightmare. You know, I'm in there and supposedly doing my dream job, supposedly like playing in the NFL, supposedly being in this, doing all the cool guy shit. But as the saying goes, it's war is a boy's dream and a man's nightmare. You know, and so that mission, it went south, and unfortunately, that was my last Ranger op. And I ended up, you know, several months later finding myself, I was away from my wife, I was away from the Rangers, I was in another military school, and I had that bottle of whiskey in one hand and a gun in the other hand, and I was ready to end it. So what got me into coaching was that the Rangers and becoming an infantry officer, I applied a lot of personal development to my life, right? I went from a small town kid to achieving a spot in the military that was very difficult for me, right?
Yeah.
But when I hit this low point after the Rangers, I turned to personal development again to get myself right. I dropped the drink. I started working on my discipline, my wake up time. I started working on journaling, reflecting, like getting positive information in my head, because I felt like I absolutely let everybody down during that night, that last Ranger op.
It's so interesting. You kind of described that, is that you mentioned survivor's guilt, is that there was a lot of thoughts, a lot of things that were going on where you felt like there's kind of no escape. Maybe the best way to escape this is through potentially a suicide. Yeah. And what you did was you put good information in and you journaled information out. That's it. Talk about the importance of just going back to sometimes even the fundamentals of doing this stuff, because it feels like a lot of people want a magic pill. They want things to go away quickly, right? Like a trigger or something else or some kind of pill, versus putting in the work. And talk about like putting in the work to actually get better, taking the time to read, taking the time to journal, taking the time to get up on time, mastering that discipline within yourself and self-leading.
I mean, I will say this, like, desperation creates change, you know, and I was in such a mental state, and a lot of leaders get there, you know, sometimes their business blows up and it's outpacing them, and they feel like they're so stressed out from trying to keep up with it that they're going to fail, and they're hiding from everything and they're turning to vices. Other times it's maybe their business isn't blowing up and they're actually just struggling to make payroll, and they want to quit, and they feel like they're letting everybody down. They see themselves as a failure. So everybody's been in that dark spot, and maybe as a parent, you know, you're in that spot too, feeling like you're letting your kids down and you're failing. And like the thing in those moments of failure, like the only way out is through. Like Winston Churchill said that. He said, if you're going through hell, keep going. And so what happened to me was that I was in this low point, feeling like I failed at everything in my life, feeling like I failed at the dream job. And the thing was is that I made a commitment to God when I was on my pursuit to becoming a Ranger. And that night when I almost ended it, the only reason I didn't was because of that commitment. And I was actually pissed off, you know. I was mad because I had promised to God that if he had helped me achieve this dream job that I had inside of my heart and my soul, that I told him, I promise I'll pay it forward tenfold. So that night, my commitment to God is what got me to turn my life around. And so I dropped the drink. I started working on myself. I started journaling, started reading and reflecting. And since then, in the last, I think it's been 7 years now, maybe a little longer. I've journaled every single day for over 7 years. And I think I've missed one time. I missed one time when I was traveling, and I'd never missed journaling. And it's because, like to your point, if you really want, people avoid the shadow work. Like Carl Jung talks about that, right? Like your biggest opportunities are behind your biggest levels of resistance. Your biggest fears hold your biggest opportunities. Everything that you want in life, how you want to feel about yourself, is all behind the things that you don't want to confront. You don't want to look at the boogeyman. You don't want to look at that shit. And so we all have skeletons in our closet. We all have failures. Mm-hmm. And so what journaling did for me is it was an accountability mirror. And it got me to look in the mirror and really identify where I was messing up. I was, you know, like I said, I was drinking a lot. So I was living 2 lives: superhero by day, drinking, partying on the weekends, living 2 lives. That doesn't work for anybody. But, you know, point is the importance of building your foundation in life is so important, because the Rangers taught me the value of practicing the fundamentals. They lived by that quote: we're not going to practice till we get it right. We're going to practice till we can't get it wrong. And when it comes to like your life, the fundamentals are more important than how high you can go. Like people try to train their ceilings, right? How high can I get my business revenue? How high can I get my strength? Yeah. How high can I get my life? Instead of, what does your motherfucking floor look like, dude? Like let's train our floor, our standards, so that we rise higher and we don't actually have to jump as high.
That's so good. So what you're saying is, it's almost like not necessarily shiny object syndrome, but that the easy place to go is through that ceiling, and the harder place to go is that shadow work.
100%.
And I love what you said. Journaling is an accountability mirror, or like if you want to have an accountability mirror, it's journaling. What daily habits and routines do you recommend to build that resilience and that focus?
Yeah, I mean, my routine started back in 2013. I tried to, my ego got ahead of me. I was like an infantry officer. I went from enlisted soldier, where everybody was in charge of me, making like $1,200, $1,300 a month, to 7-8 years later, I was an infantry officer, and I started I had a little bit of money in the bank. I tried to buy my first house, and I was in Hawaii. And the banks were like, hell no, we're not lending you $700,000, Jeremiah. You don't have that type of,
you're not all that, bro.
You're not that, all that, bro. Yeah. I was so fucking mad, dude. I was like, what do you mean you're not going to lend me the money? Give me the money. And they're like, no, you just don't qualify. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I tried like 3 other banks. And anyways, when I got rejected financially, I realized that that was a humbling experience, right? So I went to personal development. I basically turned my whole life upside down. I started doing everything different because I couldn't buy this house. I realized that everything that I thought about life and success was wrong. Because
flipped.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just nobody taught me to do this. I just made this deduction. I'm like, well, if I can't get the house, that means that I've been lied to, because I thought that I was doing things right. Mm-hmm. So I turned my whole life upside down. I started going to the gym at different times. I started working different muscle groups. I started I put my cell phone in.
I finally hit glutes for the most.
Yeah, exactly. I
got to get these in. This is why, bro. I haven't done it.
I started taking different routes to work. Put my cell phone in a different pocket, and when I started doing that, my mindset started changing. I started seeing the world differently, and I was taking myself out of that subconscious programming that we all fall into. You know, like the autopilot that we're all in. Right? I pulled myself out of the hamster wheel. And I started building my routine back in 2013 as a way to get myself on track financially. Well, when I hit rock bottom in 2017, those fundamental principles that helped me financially, to get myself going and help me get into the Rangers, I turned to all those to get myself out of rock bottom. And I like to remind people this too, man. When it comes to rock bottom is not a bad time. It's not a bad day. It's not a bad moment. Rock bottom is where you actually fucking change. People will go their whole life having bad days and bad moments, but they don't change, and they'll call them rock bottom. It's not rock bottom until you change. And rock bottom is a good thing, because it makes you confront you. You look back at your past, you look back at that shadow work, and you're like, man, I fucked up here, here, and here. And you finally take accountability for your life, and you realize that you're the only one that's going to get you out of the hole that you put yourself in.
I love that, because one thing that it kind of does is it forces you to point at something. I think we were talking about a little bit earlier. We just went to the gym a little bit earlier today, and then we just came straight here. And one thing we were talking about is the importance of pointing to the problem. And when you hit rock bottom, it can't be really anything else other than you sometimes. It's like if you point to it, then you can own it. You can own that problem and do something around it. one thing I wanted to kind of ask you too is that in personal development, what was that biggest aha moment for you? Like, what did you come across where you're like, oh, like this,
Yeah.
this just hit home for me. Like it was a good mirror. What's that biggest aha that you've discovered through your journey in personal development?
Well, so the first couple steps is what really turned my whole world upside down. And what happened was, like, because I wasn't winning financially, I started studying. I went to online, I went to Google, and I just typed in like how to make millions. And then I was like
millions and
yeah,
millions
exactly.
and millions.
It was like so ridiculous. And then I was like, then I started researching wealthy people, successful people, and I just typed in a bunch of keywords that was like fastest way to become a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like
ball out of control.
Yeah, all this shit. Youngest billionaires ever and all this type stuff. So I started researching, and for about a full week, I just was glued to the internet trying to get all, like, find what successful people had that I didn't have.
Mm.
And every article that I read, the common theme that I found in everybody that was successful was that they all read a book a week.
Yeah.
And that was the information that I found. But I might have saw it because that's what I lacked. Like, you in life, you see what you love and you see what you lack, right?
Yeah.
You see your problems and what you love. So for me, I was never a reader, and I dodged reading. I was always that guy that found the cliff notes, and I didn't read a full book until my 20s. So it was like this glaring thing that I found with all of these successful people.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out they all read a book a week, I gulped, and I was like, oh, I gotta read.
I'm never gonna read. Read, like,
but
give me that Goosebumps book. I'll smash 15 of those in a week, baby.
But just that leaders are readers was like a big thing, and then the next thing was like learning about just limiting beliefs, you know, and a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. I had a very much a fixed mindset in life, you know, and
what is that? Just for the audience, of like when you say growth mindset, fixed mindset, scarcity mindset, like what's that to you?
A fixed mindset means like you think that your life is what it's supposed to be, and you have no control over growing it to the next level in any capacity. And I thought that I was who I was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And when I found out about a growth mindset, I learned that no, I became who I believed I was supposed to be.
Mm.
And so a growth mindset for me, it became a starting point for me to create whoever I wanted to become in life. And so I was a guy, I grew up hunting bear in Northern California, a small, shy kid. When I got into the military, I was an engineer. When I found personal development, I found my way to becoming an infantry officer. Not only that, but then Army Ranger, then Commander, and then entrepreneur. And you know, now I coach 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs all the time. And I'm like, how the fuck did this kid from a little town who nobody wanted to, like, he was scared to speak up in class, how did he become this level of person? Like, and this is, it's not even about my story. It's just, you know, everybody that's listening, I want you guys to like really take in who you think you are, because that's, you know, it's not who you think you are that's holding you back. It's who you think you're not. And I learned through adopting a growth mindset that I was deselecting myself from success. I was deselecting myself from the levels that I wanted to play at in life. Now, deselecting is like a military term. So when I wanted to become a Ranger, a lot of infantry officers want to get into special operations, be Rangers, and do this cool guy stuff. But, you know, the terror barrier, like anytime you get up to the terror barrier, the area where the crossroads are, you got to make a decision whether you're going to go for it or not. And you start shaking, you get uncomfortable, and you don't want to do it. Like jumping out of an airplane, parachuting. Yeah. You know, a lot of people freeze in that moment. They overthink, they doubt themselves, they question everything, and they deselect themselves from the process. So they never even give themselves a shot to go to the selection and get selected because they deselect.
Right.
So for myself, the growth mindset helped me not deselect myself from the levels that I wanted to play at, and that's what I would encourage for everybody here.
That's very, very interesting. And how much would you say that? Because that's an interesting concept. Is that I'll look at something and be like, oh, that's not for me. That's not for Antonio. That's not for me. And there are probably going to be some things in there that's legitimate. Right. That there's certain things that it is not in alignment with me. I deselected myself from it because it's just, it's not, doesn't serve me. Right. And then there's other things where someone can deselect themselves because it is going against an identity that they're holding on to, but they should do it. It's like your limiting belief system is playing tricks on you that you are saying, I shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
right?
It's the energy that you're tapped into.
It's like two things, right?
Yeah, it's the energy you're tapped into. It's like in life, it's like the best metaphor for life is the shopping mall. because you're going to carry a certain energy and you're going to go into that shopping mall and decide what stores are for you and what are not. But at any point in time, you could pick the stores that you want to go into. Like maybe you were like a Hot Topic kid or something like that when you were younger. You're like, your favorite store is Hot Topic.
Like PacSun or some shit back in the day.
Yeah, but like right across the hall was the Gucci store or whatever. But you chose PacSun. You chose Hot Topic because that's what you felt like it was meant for you. But you could have easily gone in there, even if it was just a look around. But the frequency that you carry around in life like attracts and tells you what stores you're going to go into. So a lot of people have the Gucci store right there that they want to go into, but they deselect themselves and they say, that's not for me subconsciously. And they go into the Hot Topic store because that's what they're familiar with.
That's interesting. Just to kind of go that a little bit further, when we're going back to kind of that shadow work, you know, they don't believe that, like the Gucci store now, like that example, that like, I don't feel like this is for me. I don't feel like I want to, necessarily level up to that or do that. When you're working with like business owners, when you're working with people, and there's some things you're coming from a level of that's not for you because that's against your core values, and you're not doing this other thing mostly because you're scared or because it's getting out of your comfort zone. What's that process like, or what's that dialogue like with somebody when you're like you're deselecting yourself here because you're just scared or you're getting out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, most of the time deselection comes from leading with their analytical thinking mind and not leading out of intuition. So like
break that down a little bit, because that's definitely for us working with doctors and different people, like they can lean very analytical. Yeah. And to tell someone like coming from faith and spirit and this, it's like what does that even mean? Yeah. Describe that. Yeah. What is that?
Well, I'll tell you. So how many of you guys like want to achieve your mission like even faster? How many of you guys want like to be able to handle high pressure scenarios? How many of you guys want to be able to get shit done and just move effortlessly through it? Well, combat is the perfect example for how that actually gets done in real life. Like, you think in the military, like you don't have the privilege of being analytical on the battlefield. Like, you're going to think through some shit, but you don't have time to sit there and like pull out your pros and cons sheet and
like
freaking
a SWOT analysis.
No, bro.
Hold on, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on, ISIS. 1 second.
Bro, shut up, nerd. Go fucking sit in the ditch and let me handle this shit. You know what I mean?
Silence.
Yeah. But no, I'm a little bit of a nerd too, so I can talk like that. But I'm a super analytical overthinker type by nature, and I've had to teach myself how to be this way and live out of intuition and spirit. So, the best things in your life come from intuition and spirit. They don't come through really thinking about it. It's like the girl that you marry, the husband that you marry. When you operate from feeling, you actually get connected to like things that are tied to your purpose. All right. And so the military, what it taught me to do was to lean in to my feelings. There was an op where I almost didn't listen to my feelings, didn't listen to my intuition, and I almost lost my life. We were sitting around the mission table, kind of like this right here. And there was my key leaders all around the table, and we were going to go capture or kill this target. The objective was 3 objectives in the shape of a triangle: a northwest objective, a northeast, and then a south objective. So our task force was going to go in and simultaneously had to clear and secure all 3 compounds at once. This was my mission. And we were going to set in a support by fire position, set in some snipers, and then at the exact same time during darkness, go in and clear these compounds. So we were deciding at the planning table where the machine guns should go. And by the way, we were going to get dropped off by helicopter, and we actually had to march into these locations in the mountains of Afghanistan, like 8,000, 9,000 feet up in the mountains. So we're strategizing around who's going to take what guns. And the Mark 48 was a gun that we were talking about, which is a very great weapon to have on the battlefield.
Sounds awesome.
Shoulder fire.
Bring the Mark 48.
Oh, man, dude, this thing makes you feel like such a man with this thing, dude. Oh, yeah. It's like
I grew an extra testicle just by carrying this weapon.
Driving 120 miles an hour or freaking firing a Mark 48. I don't know. It's amazing. But or a 50 cal off the top of a truck. But point is my platoon sergeant was very experienced, had been in way more deployments, combat than I had. And this happens in businesses as well. Yeah. The leader in charge will default to the experience of the team. They'll overvalue the experience of the team versus actually trust their intuition to make the call on what needs to happen. So I'm deciding what machine gun is going to go where. Me and him are talking, and he's like, "Sir, I'm going to take the machine gun to my objective," even though he already had one going to his. And I was like, "No, I think I need it down by mine." And he's like, no, you don't need it because there's only a couple of guys that we saw on surveillance down at your objective. He's like, mine is more chaotic, more kinetic. There's more traffic. He's like, it's a bigger threat. And my gut was like, fine, you know what? You go ahead and take it. I don't need it. I'll take the smaller machine gun, the 249. We get down there. We hit all 3 objectives. His objective was very kinetic, like multiple, like 7. I think we had 7 KIA that night from his one objective. And then down by mine was 4 KIA. But when we got down to my objective, we got into a gunfight. The enemy heard our approach, started firing upon us, and we were literally like, they were shooting at us from like 15 meters away. Mm-hmm. That's how close we were to machine gun fire.
That's just like from here to there.
Bro, it's so
like,
close. It was. I
can't even imagine like what the adrenaline and everything. Just that.
It was fucking
just like right there, dude.
Yeah,
like
and
not that far.
We were just behind a berm. We pulled back behind the road. We started bounding back and getting some different cover. But I remember in that moment just thinking like, damn, I should have brought the machine gun that I wanted.
Yeah.
You know, like,
thanks, Frank. Yeah.
No,
it could have been rolling.
So we ended up like having mission success that night. When we got back, me and my platoon sergeant at the time like joked about it. He's like, sir, I should he's like, my bad, sir. That's all he said. But point of the story is that, you know, my intuition was guiding me the right direction. And a lot of times I was using my analytical mind. I was using my thinking to decide what was the right call, pros and cons and all that type of shit. You're far more likely to achieve success following your intuition than just your analytical mind. Like that shit just slows you down. And that's what I learned from the military.
It seems like that's one of the things like we kind of don't appreciate about the military sometimes is that maybe from the outside looking in, like from a distance, it's, you know, teaching people to be highly analytical, to be these almost like very robotic, you know, go through basic training, like learn this and just be a machine out in the battlefield. But what you're saying is like, no, it's that training so you can't get it wrong. And once you have this kind of programming installed into you, you're going through faith. You're leading through faith, through feeling and intuition.
100%. Yeah. And I'm not saying to throw planning out the window because you need planning, you need training in order to get the reps in, right? Like you need that stuff. But in those moments of decision and high stress and it's time to act and you're in that analysis or paralysis by analysis stage, you need to get out of your head and into your heart and start moving, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, because we're certainly not giving off the impression of like, you know, people out in the battlefield and they're like, let's just wing it, guys. Let's just feel our way through it. You know, let's just, you know, take this little Humvee.
There's some operators that were like that. Like, fuck, dude.
Yeah, just YOLO, man. Just, it's all good.
I think it was Mattis.
Like,
was it Mattis that said it or Patton? He's like, the first casualty of war is the plan, but also planning.
What a great business. Like just first casualty of war is the plan.
Yeah. And then, the other one is,
that's like Mike Tyson's quote too. Like everyone has a plan going into the ring until they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah. But, failure to plan is planning to fail. Like that's another one, right?
Yeah.
Like failure to plan is planning to fail.
What's a mistake or kind of a failure you've had as a leader and how has it shaped your perspective on leadership today?
I mean, that last Ranger mission was a huge failure. Also, I mean, there's been just more relatable, probably leadership challenges. Like I had a Christmas party with a bunch of Rangers at my house and I allowed it to get out of hand and one of our team leaders punched another leader in the face. Like that messed me up. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have allowed that to happen. When I was in Afghanistan, we had the Afghan partner force attached to us and they actually protested and stopped fighting because of a cultural issue that we had over there. That was a huge leadership challenge. They basically wouldn't go out on target. But I would say the biggest leadership challenge has been 2 things. One, dealing with the failure of my last Ranger mission and forgiving myself and not putting all the responsibility on myself for that op and realizing that, you know, as a collective group, we did the best that we could and we actually achieved success because nobody died. Like that was a huge, huge awakening realization for me.
Self-forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
That feels like that's something that I feel like isn't spoken about enough. But you mentioned survivors, guilt, you mentioned, and it's like it kind of circles back around to self-forgiveness a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of business leaders struggle with the fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a high achiever to experience failure, that's like a cardinal sin. Mm-hmm. You didn't just fail, you are a failure in your mind. You know what I mean? It's an identity that you like start to internalize. And you're not going to achieve anything. You're not going to live a fulfilling life if you see yourself as a failure. You know, I am is the center point of consciousness. It creates your life. The statement I am creates your life. So if I tell myself I am a failure, I'm never going to go achieve a life of success. Right. And I wish more people took some time with that is to be more meticulous about the statements that they're putting on themselves. Like these labels that they, if you're a business owner and you believe that you are an analytical or you are a certain way, not like you're just creating that identity, so, yeah, I mean, failing overseas on ops was a huge one. Also learning that the way to succeed as a leader is the fastest path to success as a leader is alignment.
Alignment.
100%. As a person and as a team.
And when you're describing alignment to somebody, like what is that? Like we hear it like in business terms, like we're not in alignment. We need to get into alignment. And then if you tell someone like you need to get into alignment, it's like, what is that? What's that? Like describe that.
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody rowing the same direction, the same pace, and everybody's on the same mission, But more importantly for leaders, it's living in alignment.
Yes.
Like you're not going to take your business to the next level if you are incongruent with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am an inconsistent person, how am I going to take my business to the next level? You have to be that consistent person first. So my issue that I had to learn, the military glamorizes alcohol, right? And it's a very much a lifestyle thing. Plus, when you're in your 20s and 30s and stuff, it's very natural to fall into those habits and routines. But for me, for a high achiever, it becomes a lifestyle. It's not just, you don't do things just one time. You do them all the time and you don't stop. That's like obsessives are like that.
Yeah.
So my point is I was living two lives. And this is one of the biggest failures for leaders. Leaders struggle with imposter syndrome, feeling like they can't grow the business because they're not good enough. They struggle with the fear of failure. They struggle with self-doubt. But a lot of times what the issue is they're not living in alignment with how they know they need to live. In other words, they're self-sabotaging themselves and living two lives. Like for me, I was a superhero during the day and I was a shit show at night. Like how can you show up to work and like work your ass off and outperform every single person that's there that you're around and just be so competitive and then come home and treat yourself like shit, drink, check out, be just all in your feelings, like just totally withdraw from society and just feel like absolute shit about yourself and bury yourself with things that don't actually make you happy, like excess drink and food and laziness. You think those things that make you happy, but those are the things that actually cause the unhappiness,
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is that like the fastest path to success is alignment. And these two, living two lives is basically like putting shackles on yourself and putting yourself in a prison cell.
Yeah.
It's holding you back in life. And so, with a failure that I had to learn was that, I had to unshackle myself and stop living two lives. Like one more thing on this is that I used to teach people when I was in the military to not get too close to their people. I used to teach people that was a leadership responsibility, that you should know your people, but you shouldn't be so close that you're a friend to your people.
So like attachment, like don't get attached essentially.
Right. Like you want to, like if you're on my team, there's danger in me being super, super close to you because you'll start to overstep. You maybe will lose some respect for me. And we'll get too close to where you won't necessarily carry out the orders that are given when we are training together, when we're with each other. So
it could compromise like a mission or a strategy.
Yeah.
Just by getting attached to somebody.
Attached or just you might actually have too much. Yeah, exactly. Too much empathy. You might start caring too much to where your compassion for the person is actually what's influencing your decisions. And not only that, but it also, if you're too close to people, then it could put you at risk if you're living in a lifestyle that's not professional,
mm-hmm.
right? So if me and you were boys, basically layman's terms, if me and you were boys or we're strangers, I'm your boss, I'm your team leader, we go to work, you're my soldier, we start hanging out, we start getting along, we're around the same age, all of a sudden we get real close. And then we go out to the strip club together. We go to the strip club and I'm your leader. Like that's going to carry over into work, right? Like we went to a strip club together and now all of a sudden when I want you to do something at work, maybe I did something stupid at the strip club and now you don't respect me, you're not listening to me. And now all of a sudden we're kind of like, we're not a cohesive team. It's you versus me. And you've seen my true other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my point at this is that I used to tell people to have these boundaries with their team members. But the real reason I was saying that in retrospect was that I wasn't comfortable being my best self all the time. Like instead of putting boundaries up between you and your team to protect the lifestyle that you might have or the way that you are when you're on your downtime, what you really need to do is be your best self, 24 hours out of the day and not live two lives. Then you don't have an issue.
I see. So it's a matter of integrity really pops out to me
100%.
as this kind of value, is that if you're living in integrity and you're in alignment with yourself and your values, you know what those values are, you're living them out, there's really kind of no reason for that compromise or that liability to happen.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I saw what you did over here, and it's like it's almost like a got you moment, or or compromises leadership.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of those two things. I guess when it comes to that, when it comes to like integrity, how did you kind of start moving away from that when I guess you're essentially saying like you're teaching people to create that. At what point did you switch it as far as like you just got to be in integrity, you got to be in alignment? And what was that coaching like?
After rock bottom. So when I hit rock bottom, when I was reading and reflecting and kind of going through my shit, I was reflecting on all of my life. I reflected on mistakes that I made as a leader. I reflected on mistakes that I made as a husband, mistakes that I made as a son. Like I reflected on all of my mistakes and I took a lot of accountability. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that when I came through the military, for some reason, one of the common themes that my great leaders passed on to me, which this was, I call all the great leaders that I've had in my life Major Steel, the persona.
Major Steel?
Yeah. It's a persona.
Oh.
So instead of being like my high school wrestling coach and my commander and like all these different people, I just Major Steel.
That's cool.
So the lessons that Major Steel passed along to me about life success and leadership, one of the biggest ones was about the value of integrity. When I was getting mentored by Major Steel and when I was in the military, he always told me that to do what you think is right, that leadership was about doing the right thing when no one was watching. And that it was a message that was always in the back of my mind and it always stuck there. But I thought I was living it, but I wasn't really living it. And when I found out when I hit rock bottom was the thing that turned me around was living in integrity to myself. So when I dropped the drink, I started being more structured, more disciplined. I smoothed out my life. I was the best version of me all the time. Mm-hmm. Then life actually started moving along for me and I started feeling more happy, more fulfilled. I had more confidence and everything just started happening faster. I mean, I met higher quality people. I met my first paid mentor. I became an author. I started doing podcasting. I launched a business, but it all came down to building integrity as a part of my base and getting in alignment.
Because you mentioned Major Steel, so all the people that poured into you, like mentorship is a huge thing. I am so grateful for the people that poured into my life. Can you share a moment when someone believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself?
Yeah, I mean,
because it sounds like that's kind of a huge turning point for a lot of young men that they're finding their way is having those mentorships and those coaches and those guides.
Yeah, I'll say, you guys that are looking for a mentor, like the teacher appears when the student's ready, and I think that we all have mentors that are around us. We're just not looking for them. Mm-hmm. And, when I decided to switch from enlisted soldier to infantry officer, we didn't have massive communities where you could hire a mentor. I really wasn't even on the internet, I struggled and I was alone for a lot of it, but I was looking for somebody to help me out. And every step of the way, you're going to have somebody in your life that's going to help you out and guide you along. People come into your life for seasons or reasons.
Yeah.
Right. And, my mentor, Major Steel, back when I was a lieutenant, he was the one that nudged me to get into special operations. And I was going to deselect myself. And he actually saw something in me and he said, "Hey, have you thought about doing this?" And, I was nervous, but I listened to his guidance and I went for it. So, I mean, even like Chris, like that's a Major Steel in my life. Chris convinced me to open my business the way I did. And, to get into leadership coaching. He's like, "Bro, you've changed so much from a small town kid. Mm-hmm. You've got all this leadership experience. You need to package that up and teach people." And when he told me that, I just like laughed. I was like coaching and consulting. That's like
talk to people,
like
build them up,
build a business about talking.
Yeah.
But I respected his results, and so I listened to him. So I would just say that like people that are searching, what you want wants you. So if you're looking for a mentor, there's a mentor out there that's actually looking for you, but a fish sees water last. And, you know, you're probably going to see that mentor. He's right in front of you, and you just got to have your eyes open, be actually looking for him, and drop your ego. A lot of guys won't drop the ego.
Like drop it. Like I need help, or I need guidance, or
be vulnerable enough to like say, hey, I want to get some mentorship, and I'm willing to pay the price, whatever that means. You know, whether it's financial or whether it's a time commitment or whatever the sacrifice is, that to show that you're willing to make that leap, but you have to drop the ego, be vulnerable. That might be the price that you have to pay.
It's such a interesting transference of power, because you somebody can come in and be like, I need mentorship, I need coaching, I need someone to pour into me, and then being ready to receive that.
Yeah.
And in that transference of power, it's like now you become that person that now you're mentoring and coaching others. And it's such a interesting transition that happens too, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would also say if you're trying to find a mentor and you're trying to succeed in life, some of y'all motherfuckers got to stop going to your mentor and telling your mentor how to coach you.
Yeah. Because
if you're telling them how to coach you, now we have two people that are keeping you where you're at. You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's something like, what's a lesson that you've learned from someone that you've mentored or coached that humbled you?
Oof. I mean, I feel like I'm humbled all the time, man. But so I'm teaching them, and they taught me something about myself.
Yeah. I've had a couple of humbling experiences, and it wasn't like anything negative, but it was a feedback that I got that helped me either get more gratitude, or like it was something that surprised me, that in coaching someone, like something that I uncovered, I was like, this is actually a really good lesson for myself.
I mean, I learned the power of vulnerability through my students.
Power of vulnerability.
The power of vulnerability through my students. Because I got so caught up in building my brand and building my coaching business that I'm a very mission-focused type of person. And I think, you know, a lot of people in the medical field and analytical minds are very much like this. So you'll set a target. You want to get your business revenue to a certain amount, and you know what it takes to get there. And so you just be like a robot. You just go. But the more you act like a robot, the less you can actually influence people, because you become less relatable. And so my students, they thought I had positioned myself to showcasing almost perfection. And they were having a hard time being inspired and following suit, because I wasn't showcasing the full side of everything. So I learned I got to show you guys more of my mistakes, man. Like, I've messed up so much. I had a freaking 850 on my SAT. I was a college dropout. I freaking I failed here, and here, you know what I mean? Like, and I just had to lay all that stuff out with them and start really showcasing that stuff more. And now I even do it with my social media. Like, I got this car situation going on that I put on social media, and everybody's like, fuck, man. Like, and it took a lot for me to put that out there. Yeah. But point is, you know, vulnerability, like, I used to have a hard time with that word. And if you're a leader that has a hard time with vulnerability, you need to remember that it's really really what it means is that you're courageous when you're vulnerable, you know? And it takes a lot of strength to be that way. It takes taking the mask off, it takes being authentic, and it takes really being willing to connect with people at an emotional level and not being afraid that you're going to get hurt in the process.
Oh, absolutely. So in going through Army Ranger School and going through the military, coaching people, being mentored, leadership is a huge pillar with Conquer Academy. And really, at the end of the day, now with the experience that you've had and everything, what do you wish people understood about leadership?
Just that not everybody's the same animal and species, man. Like,
what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so one of the common problems with leaders,
I'm a pigeon.
Yeah, no, you're whatever you want to be, Antonio. I'm a peacock, Captain. You got to let me fly.
Yeah.
But no. So one of the mistakes that I made early on as a leader is that I try to treat everybody like me. You know, I'm like type A, competitive, gonna go for it in life, gonna go for it in my military career. And I learned that, you know, everybody is not that exact type of personality, you know? There's action type people in life, there's social people, there's emotional people, and there's practical people.
Yep.
And so I wish more people knew emotional intelligence, and they understood where people are actually at in their life and what type of species, quote unquote, that they are, so that they can actually, because your job as a leader, you're not, like, a lot of people think that leadership is about directing, but really what it's about is facilitating. Like, if you help facilitate somebody's growth and you help facilitate somebody's life success, then they actually accomplish not just what you want them to accomplish at work, but they're accomplishing what they want in life, and they show up to work at a higher level. The military taught me that. They taught me that, you know, if you want to, your job as a leader is not to control your people and manage them and get them to perform. It's to actually take care of them and prepare them for the next assignment, prepare them for life. And when you do that, you actually retain people. You have a stronger culture,
better production,
better performance. Everything's better.
Yeah, people show up. There's
100%.
Less absenteeism rate. People actually show up to work. Less vacations.
Yeah, so you got to teach yourself empathy, and it's not that hard. It takes practice. Like, you have to like learn, just like going to the gym and lifting weights. You have to practice that muscle over and over again, and seek to understand when you're talking to people. Like, understand what they're actually saying, and feel into it. You know.
It ties in so beautifully with what you mentioned a little bit earlier, as far as servitude. You know, leadership is servitude, and if someone is not emotionally intelligent, God, that's hard to do, because you're not understanding the person and how they want to be led, so you can basically get the most out of them. Not in an unethical way, but it's like kind of what you're saying. Like, what's the species? Like, the way that you train a German Shepherd is not how you train a stallion, and that's not how you train somebody else. It's like you got to make those adjustments, and
100%.
that's an EQ thing.
100%. It's EQ, and you can study it a little bit. You know, you can dive into some psychology books a little bit and make them a little bit analytical, so you can connect the dots. Some people are a little more innate with that. You know, like if you grow up with trauma in your life, like as a kid, you're probably going to be more emotionally intelligent. You know. Yes.
What is the best way for people to connect with you?
Oh, Instagram, man. Jeremiah Sullivan on Instagram. Just make sure you spell the name right, guys. JeramiahSolven.
Jeremiah, it was a pleasure having you on here. Learned a lot today. I took a gang of notes, and just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome.